People keep calling this a family issue, a sad father and son fallout, a private royal heartbreak. But the truth? This was never just about feelings. This was about money, power, and a bill no one wanted to pay. And when King Charles finally drew the line, it landed hard, not softly, not gently. It landed like a cold public message that said, if you walk away from the crown, you don't keep living on its dime. Prince Harry didn't get protection. He didn't get a pass. He didn't get the quiet safety net so many assumed was still there. What he got instead was silence. And that silence said everything. Because for the first time since Harry walked away, the monarchy stopped pretending this was about fear. It became about responsibility. And suddenly, Harry was being told to pay for his own choices. For years, Harry has repeated the same warning like a broken record. He said he wasn't safe in the UK. He said returning home without police protection could get him killed. He said his life was at risk. Those words became the foundation of his lawsuits, his interviews, his public pressure campaign. It was the story he told over and over again. But then something small, ordinary, and devastating slipped through the cracks. A door camera clip. No chaos, no panic, no danger. Just Harry, alone. He's pacing casually. No guards, no police, no urgency. Just wandering back and forth, killing time, waiting for friends before heading into a pub. Relaxed, comfortable, acting like someone who doesn't believe the danger he keeps describing. And here's the part that matters most. This wasn't before the lawsuits. This wasn't years ago. This happened during the same period he was suing the British government, claiming he could not safely exist in public without protection. Fear doesn't take days off. Real danger doesn't pause for convenience. People who truly believe they are targets don't voluntarily ditch protection and stroll around casually. Harry had security available. He chose not to use it. And that single image didn't just raise eyebrows. It cracked the entire narrative wide open. Because if the threat was real, his behavior didn't match it. Still, Harry pushed forward. He sued the British government, then he sued again. His argument was simple. He believed he deserved taxpayer-funded police protection whenever he stepped foot in the UK. Not private guards, not hired security, police officers, public resources, authority-backed protection. The courts didn't rush. They reviewed everything. They examined how the Royal and VIP Executive Committee made their decision. They looked for bias, abuse, errors, and the ruling came back clear and cold. The decision to remove Harry's automatic police protection was lawful. No wrongdoing. No unfair process. No special mistake. Harry lost. And then came the cost. Nearly $1.5 million in legal fees. Close to $2 million once everything was tallied. Money ordered by the court. Money owed. And quietly, uncomfortably, that money still hasn't been paid. By that point, the situation should have been over. The law had spoken. The door was closed. Harry was not entitled to automatic protection. End of story. But somehow, that wasn't the end. Because what happened next didn't follow logic. It followed power. Before getting there, there's something important people avoid talking about. Security isn't a feeling, it's planning. Real protection doesn't work on vibes or panic. Routes are mapped, locations are studied, patterns are tracked. Officers don't just show up last minute and hope everything works out. That's not how it's done. That's why schedules matter. That's why advance notice matters. Harry was never denied that process. All he had to do was submit his itinerary. Where he'd be, when he'd arrive, where he'd stay, he refused. And without that information, security teams can't operate. No schedule means no planning. No planning means no automatic deployment. So when Harry says he was left unprotected, what he's really saying is that he didn't want to follow the rules required to be protected. This wasn't safety failing him. This was cooperation ending. Now comes the part no one likes to admit. Private security is expensive. Extremely expensive. Harry's personal security is estimated to cost millions every year. Former police officers, international travel, round-the-clock coverage. The bill adds up fast. Police protection, on the other hand, costs much less. British police earn standard public salaries. Assigning officers would cost a fraction of what private security costs. And police bring something private. Guards don't. Authority, access, official status. That's the real difference. If Harry pays privately, it's his money. If police protect him, it's public money. And once you understand that, the entire battle over safety starts looking less like fear and more like a fight over who foots the bill. Here's the uncomfortable truth that changed everything. Harry didn't just inherit risk, he created it. He chose to publish details about combat kills, he criticized political leaders, he mocked institutions. He injected himself into global political debates where neutrality matters. Those weren't accidents, they were decisions. Each one raised his profile, each one increased his risk, and yet, he wanted the consequences absorbed by the public, not himself. That's the line the government refused to cross. Because when risk is self-generated, protection becomes about accountability, not entitlement. And accountability is exactly what Harry has spent years trying to avoid. At this point, the picture was clear. Protection required cooperation. He refused. Private security cost money. He didn't want to pay. Public risk increased through his own actions. The court said no. The system held firm. That should have been it. But then something strange happened. After the courts ruled against Harry, after the law settled the matter, a new security review was ordered. Not casually, not publicly debated, formally triggered. Quietly reopening a question that had already been answered. And that's where everything stopped making sense. Because this wasn't a decision the Home Secretary makes lightly. Overriding an established security ruling invites backlash, legal trouble, and political risk. Careers don't survive moves like that without backing. And in Britain, there is only one figure who can quietly request such an intervention without fingerprints: the Crown. This wasn't Harry winning a legal argument. This was power stepping in after the law said no. And once that door opens, nothing looks the same again. And when you zoom out, when you stop listening to the emotional speeches and start watching the behavior, the story starts whispering instead of shouting. Around the same time this quiet security review was triggered, Harry's international movements told a completely different story than the one he was selling to the public. Nigeria, Colombia, Ukraine. Country after country, appearance after appearance, and suddenly Harry wasn't being treated like a private citizen at all. He was received formally, addressed by royal title, handled through official channels. That doesn't happen by accident. Diplomatic protocol is stiff, slow, and painfully precise. Governments don't guess how to address someone connected to the British monarchy. They confirm it in advance. They ask questions. They wait for answers. Which means someone, somewhere, gave the green light. And that's where the contradiction becomes impossible to ignore. Because you can't claim you're stripped of status on one hand while being treated like royalty abroad on the other. You can't say you're acting independently while doors open that only open with approval. Whatever was happening behind the scenes, it wasn't chaos, it was coordination. And coordination always leaves fingerprints, even when no one wants to admit whose they are. So now we're left staring at the question no one in power once asked out loud. If a private citizen can't demand police protection, if a non-working royal isn't entitled to public resources, if the courts already ruled and closed the door, then why did the system bend afterward? Why reopen something already decided? Why risk public trust for one man? The answer isn't emotional, it's institutional. A father trying to salvage a fractured relationship. A monarchy trying to manage optics without admitting weakness. A government quietly absorbing the cost because challenging the crown publicly is never worth the fallout. But every time rules bend for one person, they weaken for everyone else. Because this was never just about Harry. This was about precedent, about accountability, about whether the same rules apply to everyone or only to those born into power. Fairness stops being fairness the moment exceptions are made quietly, and that's why this story feels so unsettling. Not because of shouting matches or public drama, but because of what happened without noise. Decisions made behind closed doors. Reviews triggered without explanation. Silence used as a tool. Because when power moves quietly, the public is left dealing with the consequences loudly. The security review still hasn't concluded, no final outcome has been announced, the consequences haven't fully landed yet, but one thing is already clear. None of this was confusion. None of it was a misunderstanding. It was a choice. A deliberate one. And choices have prices. Let's take a breath and look at everything laid out plainly. Harry was filmed walking alone while claiming he couldn't safely step outside. He sued the government and lost. The courts ruled the removal of protection was lawful. Nearly $2 million in legal fees were ordered, and they still remain unpaid. He refused to provide advance itineraries required for protection planning. He rejected the cooperation that security demands. He objected to paying for private security while pushing for publicly funded police protection. At the same time, he increased his own risk through public statements, political commentary, and detailed disclosures that widened his profile globally. And then, after all of that, after the court said no, a mysterious security review was quietly triggered anyway. This was never about a scared man begging for safety. This was about a bill being handed back to someone who didn't want to pay it. And the hardest truth of all, the system didn't collapse. It adjusted. It bent just enough to protect itself, to protect relationships, to protect image, to protect tradition. And when institutions protect themselves, transparency is always the first thing sacrificed. People keep waiting for this to explode into a dramatic confrontation, a press conference, a confession, a public reckoning. But that's not how real power operates. Real power moves softly. It leaves no receipts. And by the time the public notices, the decision is already in motion. This story isn't over. It's only reached the stage where the cost is being quietly calculated. And sooner or later, someone always has to pay. Because when rules stop applying equally, trust erodes. When accountability becomes optional, resentment grows. And when power shields itself from scrutiny, the noise doesn't disappear, it builds. So, when people ask what this was really about, the answer isn't security. It's not family drama. It's not even Harry. It's about who gets special treatment when the law says no. It's about whether money and status can rewrite decisions already settled. And it's about how far institutions will go to avoid admitting they bent the rules. The review may conclude, the headlines may fade, but the question will remain. Who really paid the price? And who was protected when protection was never supposed to be theirs? Because once power moves in silence, the public is left to deal with the noise that follows. And this noise isn't going away anytime soon.